Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy Prolapse Danis, and today we're back with a non-Elden Ring video for once. People have beat God of War in many ways, but nobody has been stupid enough to try to beat it only using your shield. So that means no axes, no blades of chaos, no fists, and no boy. Now, Mama did in fact raise a little bitch, so I'm just going to be picking the balance difficulty because I did try to do this on Give Me God of War mode, but I got so frustrated that I wanted to have my own boy just so I can punch him out of frustration. Now, you may be wondering how I walk around with such a large schlong. Well, a little lopsided, but what you should be wondering is how I'm going to actually beat the first enemies in the game without an ability to do damage with my shield because you don't actually start the game with any. Well, young grasshopper, we need to parry the first enemy in the game exactly 99 times because you get experience at 25 parries, at 50 parries, and at 100 parries. The first two milestones we reach will give us enough XP to get the first shield ability, which allows us to shield break enemies who are blocking and also does the teeniest amount of damage. Once we get to 99 though, we can buy our first ability and then we need to kill the first group of enemies while doing almost zero damage, and it's about as fun as eating Nick Avocado's ass. I also have to be extremely careful here to not accidentally parry one of them because if I do, I'm gonna have to restart the whole process over. If I was a smart fella and not a fart smella, I probably would have stopped at like 97 or something just in case. Once that's taken care of though, we just head down to these wolves to get our 100th parry, and that'll give us over 3000 XP, and then we just restart back at the checkpoint to do it again and repeat that process over and over again until you're satisfied. Now that we're drowning in XP, we can buy all the shield abilities we want, and despite this section being called shield combat, a few of these do not use the shield in any way, shape, or form, so I will not be buying those ones. Now that we have some new abilities, I proceed to beat the piss out of these wolves in style and to steal their lunch money for good measure. And also, guess what? This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, and it's a great time because they are celebrating their 3rd anniversary as one of the top RPG games out there because they started strong and never slowed down. Even after establishing themselves as one of the leading mobile and PC games, they didn't stop there and just kept adding new content and game modes. Since they're celebrating their 3rd anniversary, I wanted to talk about my 3 new favorite champions. My first favorite would have to be Magnar because he's got this whole Demon King vibe going on and I love the lava look all over his outfit. I also really like Tolf the Maimed because that's a sweet name for one and he literally has weapons for hands, so that's just awesome. And last but not least is Longbeard because I aspire to have a beard like his one day and he's just super strong and useful to have on the team. There's also a ton of new stuff happening in Raid this month with special events every single day, including the entirely new event for the summer called Summer Solstice. It adds a new path of light that you'll be able to explore 3 new branching paths with to get the best rewards that you want the most. On top of that, there's new champions and sets of skins for Trudna Guild Mallet. They're also running a new special Delania Chase event where you can get your hands on a brand new legendary champion for the High Elves faction just by logging in. All you gotta do is log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and July 20th and get Delania for completely free, and you will want her because she is one of the strongest support characters in the entire game. So to get started, just click the link in the description or scan my QR code on screen and get your unique bonuses worth $30. You'll get the free epic champion Vergus, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill, and an XP boost. All that is waiting for you, so just head to the link in the description and I'll see you in the game. Also, for new players, once you're in the game, just use this promo code to get your hands on everything. Get 50 XP boost to instantly get your hero Delania to max level 50, as well as a ton of silver. Alright, back to the video. Also, since I'm on the PC version of this game, we do start with some armor for free already, so I don't have to wait very long to get drippy like a broken faucet. At this point in the game, I'm still learning how to use my shield effectively, but the basic shield slam ability I have is pretty fan-fucking-tastic. Now, I have beat this game a couple times in my life, but I've literally never used the shield before because Dark Souls taught me that rolling is definitely the way to go, but in this game, the shield is actually pretty satisfying to use, especially when you get a perfect parry and smack them right in the forehead right after. Surprisingly, you could actually get some pretty cool combos going with just the shield alone, but later in the game when I'm better, it starts looking a lot cooler. I also just remembered that I have a bunch of free shield skins, and I chose this one because it has Buckler in the name, and the Buckler shield in Dark Souls is the best parry shield in the game, so it just felt right, and now I am looking extra fresh to death if I do say so myself. Now we gotta face one of those people that have been leaving mean comments on my videos, and this fight was not pretty, but the shield slam actually does a pretty decent amount of damage. I haven't learned at this point that you can do a stance switch after any shield attack to open up some new attacks, so I mainly just stuck with my basic bash for this fight most of the time. I did try to parry the platypus him, but I could never get it to work, so I'm just going to assume it's not possible, or I just suck at this game. Either is possible, honestly. Eventually though, after doing enough damage, I whisper sweet nothings into his ear and move on to one of these icy boys who are immune to your axe, but definitely not immune to taking a shield to the face, so that was pretty light work. I was actually pretty worried about the Boulder fight at first, but honestly he's kind of a puss boy because he gets staggered really easy and you can parry pretty much all of his attacks and give him the all 1-2 combo meal with extra fries and no pickles. Unfortunately, the second part of the fight does force you to fight him in sicko mode, so there's not really a single ability that you can get in this mode to use the shield, so that's kind of unfortunate. Run failed, thanks for watching. Haha, you just got pranked, you silly little goose, you freaking bozo, you gosh darn gullible man, you. This is also probably a good time to mention that I obviously won't be counting the time I have to use other weapons to solve puzzles and stuff when the game forces you to do stuff like that, because this run would be over in like 5 seconds if I did. Cool? Cool. Anyways, we continue the fight with Boulder and give him some of that autoerotic asphyxiation, if you know what I'm saying, and then we get to a section in the game where I have to fight some ranged enemies that I cannot reach with my shield at all. Lucky for me, there is an ability that lets you perfect parry a projectile and throw that shit right back in their face. Which is great, because without that ability this run would basically be impossible, but it did make me wish I had some sort of like Captain America shield throwing ability, because we're already taking Thor's hammer ability, so we might as well, you know? At this point, the game does force me to equip this runic attack ability, if you're wondering why I have it down there, because my Goo Goo Gaga gamer brain could just not figure out how to unequip it afterwards, so it's just gonna chill down there all unused and stuff. I also just realized my bitch-ass son also has a different outfit, so he could have a little drip as a treat as well. Now we have to face this little cutie pie right here, which is basically just a beefed up version of the Draugr, but what I realized here is that the shield is actually great for knocking off enemies into the abyss of nothingness, so that's pretty neato if you ask me. Right after that, we faced our first Revenant, and I was almost sure I was not going to be able to kill them without Atreus shooting them first, because the game almost makes it mandatory for you to do that. You can actually parry them, but frustratingly they always disappear faster than when I show a girl my life-size Danny DeVito pillow, so it's basically impossible to do damage to them that way. I tried every single attack I had, but the only one that works is my OG shield bash ability for whatever reason, but it does so little damage that it's almost pointless, and it literally takes 10 minutes to kill them this way. So yeah, fighting them is about as fun as gluing your hand to your ass hair, but we gotta do what we gotta do. After that, I headed down under and immediately got smoked by this guy because you actually cannot parry any attacks that have the red circle, so that is a damn shame, but we did end up getting our revenge after dying like 2 or 3 more times. I had to fight another Revenant after that, and I really wanted to test if I could do a decent amount of damage by absorbing a projectile from one enemy and throwing it at the Revenant, but I accidentally bashed him into the Shadow Realm, so I guess we'll never know now. I go through the game pretty normal after that until I get to this section where there's these guys on a ledge throwing balls of piss at you, and I was able to take them all out until the last one. For some reason the game doesn't let you parry his attack at all. I literally stood here forever and probably parried it about 30 times and it never worked, and eventually I realized that it's not even doing any damage to me. It probably has something to do with the fact that a cutscene always plays directly after you kill him, so I was unfortunately forced to kill him with my axe. Womp womp. After that, we kill some more trolls, talk to Freya, kill these new flying enemies pretty easily by throwing their gamer goo back at them, and I got a new talisman that gives me a bit of health when I activate it, so I pretty much use that for the entire rest of the game. Eventually we have to fight these Sandshrew guys who are pretty easy to parry and kill, and then we fight an ogre who is kinda similar to the trolls, but he is much easier because you can actually parry him, so it makes this fight a lot more fun. These flying elf guys aren't too bad to fight either, especially when they give you this nice precarious ledge that's just begging you to start knocking dudes off of, but after a minute I realized that these elves can literally fly and you can just knock them off the ledge and they die, so like what the fuck is that about, but whatever. Then I'm forced to go sicko mode again, and did you know you're actually invincible in these sections? Because I didn't. After that, we're met with another problem though, because there is this elf up there that literally never comes down no matter what, and unlike other projectiles in this game, you cannot parry or even block these ones, so shit. So that was another guy we were forced to kill with our axe, and then we have another problem because there's this Rocky boy over here, and the only way to kill him is by throwing your axe at his little hole thing and then throw his chunks of whatever back at him. Even when you knock him down and expose his little hole thing, you still can't use your shield to damage him, and you have to use your axe, which is a load of barnacles if you ask me, because this whole section was just made to screw over this run, but oh well, we keep trucking along anyway. You want to see me make the same mistake 5 times in a row?
And see who from the LTT team was ultimately able to tell the difference. Our test was generously sponsored by LG, who also provided their new G.
Oh, one more. And last one. And I'm dead. Good job, Ty. Eventually we get to the big spooky head elf guy that's been harassing us this whole time, and he's actually pretty tough. He has an absolute assload of health, and I'm not sure if increasing my strength in this game makes my shield attack stronger, but I really haven't upgraded it all so far, so that might be why I'm doing dick for damage. I managed to get a few cool looking combos on him, but his light attack beam thing that blinds you is super annoying, and it does a good amount of damage itself, so I do have to stay really cautious during this fight, but it is definitely doable with only a shield. Until you get to the very end and they force you to do a finisher on him, no matter how long I sit here beating the piss out of him, it just does not work. Now onto the big scaly dragon, and once again we are forced to use something other than our shield because we have to use these red explodey crystal things whenever he does an electric attack, but at least when we knock him down we can use our shield then. Sometimes before he does the electric attacks you can get some hits in on his claws, but he quickly reverts back to doing only electric attacks until you use the crystal things again, so that's pretty freaking lame if you ask me. It made me a very sad boy. After a long while, we finally get introduced to some new enemies, and it's a bunch of furries. And if you've played the old God of War games, you know canonically Kratos absolutely hates furries, so this was a piece of cake to take them out Taylor Swiftly and teach them the ways of the Lord. Then these ogres try to double team me, but I ain't about that, so I kick their asses pretty quickly and make my way to the big bad knight, which I confidently run in there just to get smacked in my bald head. It was also really disappointing to find out that my shield break ability does not in fact break his shield. You know, the ability that is designed to counter this exact thing. A very cool game, very cool. This is still probably one of my favorite fights in the game so far because it really feels like a proper duel, and until you break his armor you can't just shield bash to stun lock him to death like you can with a lot of other enemies, so that makes it pretty fun. His godlike shield can also block the projectiles from other enemies that I throw at him, but luckily it does work if I hit him in his purty little mouth. Soon after that we make our way to the Magni and Modi fight, and this was probably one of the toughest fights so far. I fight Magni at first, but I barely do any damage to this buff daddy hunk of a man, and he doesn't get staggered very easily, but sometimes the game will just decide that you can in fact stagger him, but most of the time he'll just take your hits full force without even flinching. I tried to give him my best scary face to throw him off, but obviously his mind is as strong as his body, so it was pretty useless. On top of all that, he doesn't have any attacks that I can parry, which makes him a little cheating bitch in my opinion, but then we get to fight Modi, and he is a much more enjoyable fight. He gets staggered way easier, and you could actually parry most of his attacks, making it a much more enjoyable fight. What also sucks though is that when Magni decides to give you a little hug, you're supposed to have Atreus shoot him, but I can't do that, so I just take the little forehead kiss in full force. Other than that, it was a pretty fun fight. It was pretty tough, but definitely doable with only a shield. After that, we finally get our badass Blades of Chaos, and immediately put them away forever. Then we take a little trip through hell.
They jumping me! They jumping me! Save your boy!
Eventually we get to the big bridge boss fight that the game's been hyping up for a while, but it is literally just another troll fight. It is a little different because he can teleport around and stuff, but other than that, it's a pretty standard troll fight with some regular enemies mixed in to try to throw me off my game, but I popped a couple 30 milligram Adderall before this, so I am as focused as can be. After that, we do a whole lot of puzzling because it turns out our greatest weapon is our mind, but unfortunately our mind is completely useless up against this double troll fight because this fight sucks ass. For one, there's 0 healing items in this room, and obviously you're supposed to use your axe on the fire guy and your blades on the ice one, but in case you haven't been paying attention, for one, you're a little bitch, but obviously I cannot do that. It's also really annoying because your first instinct, like mine, is probably just to kill one troll at a time, but the developers are apparently evil little bastards because they made it so if you do too much damage to one troll, they will just keep healing themselves until you take them out evenly. What kept killing me though is this one move where they just start swinging their big old rock in front of them, and if you don't block it in time, you're screwed because it does a ton of damage and it is really hard to avoid if you're standing in front of them. I actually died quite a bit of times during this fight, but after like 5 or 6 deaths and finally learning how to hit the fucking block button, I took these boys down, and if I could teabag them, I definitely would. After that, I went through this part where I just kept getting nailed by unblockable attack after unblockable attack, and it actually really sucked and was surprisingly difficult for a non-boss or mini-boss fight, and it made me lose a little bit of a piece of myself to get through it. But that was followed by one of my favorite parts because I was just absolutely destroying these dudes. I was just killing tons of them at the same time, and it just made my little monkey brain happy as can be. Then we had to do this boat section, which was actually super difficult because you need to keep the fires lit at the same time while you're fighting like 100 dudes, and it is way easier to use the Blades of Chaos to keep the fires going and attack the enemies at the same time. I didn't even know you could fail this section, but I definitely know now because I failed this part like 5 or 6 times. It took me a long ass time to get past this part. I just had to get really good at running back and forth to stop them from putting the fires out and just to try to knock them off the boat instead because that was a lot faster than just killing them straight up. Then we have to do this section with a wave of enemies from each main area of the game, and the first wave was easy enough, but the second phase made me want to unalive myself. You have to fight 2 of the elf bosses at the same time, and one of them is level 5 and has so much goddamn health and it literally takes an eternity to kill him. I always had to kill the puss boy one first so I can focus on the bigger one instead, but he was still handing my ass to me over and over until I started flirting with him a bit and showing off my muscles and my bald head, and then he finally let me kill him. The third wave was another easy one, but the last wave was definitely the hardest because we have to fight an ogre and a troll at the same time, and even Atreus knows that that's not fair. That also reminds me, I don't think I ever managed to record it, but a lot of the times during this game, after a fight, Atreus will say something about how he could actually help and stuff, and I assume that's because I'm not having him help at all, and I thought that was a nice little detail. But anyways, back to the bullshit. The ogre is actually super easy to kill. I can actually just get him stun locked up against the wall as soon as he spawns, but the troll fight is definitely the hardest troll fight in the game by far. Each one of his hits does a ton of damage, and it sets you on fire for even more damage over time. It is actually super difficult to get close to him at all without losing a chunk of your health and getting set on fire, especially because he loves doing this jumping slam attack that is really hard to avoid and not get caught on fire from. I literally died to him like 7, 8, or like 12, 13 times, and every time you die, you have to do the whole wave over again, so that means I had to kill that ogre so many goddamn times. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. Hey, Future Ty here. I figured I should probably take on at least one Valkyrie, because why not? So here's my attempt at that. Yeah, my first Valkyrie attempt did not go so well, mostly because she summons a ton of other enemies to fight alongside her, making it like almost impossible to fight her with just the shield alone. So I went out and found a different Valkyrie, and this one went much, much better. Most of her moves are parryable, and the only one that isn't is pretty easy just to sidestep and then just bash her face in after that. I was hoping she would have a projectile move that I could throw back at her, because the last one did have projectiles, but I can never get the timing right, or it's just impossible altogether. This Valkyrie had a lot more health than the last one, probably because she summons a lot of other enemies, but it really didn't matter because fighting her one-on-one is so much easier than fighting the other Valkyrie plus like 10 other enemies at the same time. But yeah, I was able to beat her eventually. It was pretty fun actually. A part of me wanted to fight the Valkyrie Queen, but I would have to do a ton of work just to get to her, and I am one lazy boy. Now we can finally get to the last boss in the game, and it was a tough one. I'm not even exaggerating when I say I didn't even die once, but it still took me 30 minutes to beat this fight because of how little damage I was doing. It's pretty similar to the first fight with him, but now you're supposed to switch back and forth between your two weapons to do more damage, so the shield was almost useless against him, but it does work on both phases. Not to mention you got Freya's bitch ass trapping you in vines and shit every 5 seconds, and she won't shut the fuck up about us fighting over and over, and I literally had to hear the same lines over and over for like 30 minutes straight. There's no healing items at first, but eventually when you're low on health every once in a while, he'll just kind of poop out a health crystal when you hit him, so that's pretty cool. Luckily, you can parry a lot of his attacks, and the best attack to parry is one of his projectiles because it does like 5 times as much damage as any of my shield attacks, which is pretty nice, but too bad I really sucked at it though. But a few smashes here and a few smashes there, and 30 minutes later, we are finally done with this fight, and I almost kind of sorta not really beat God of War only using a shield. This really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. The shield was a lot more versatile than I thought it was going to be, and you can actually get some pretty good combos in exclusively with the shield. I really doubt that developers ever intended the shield to be a main weapon, but if you're crafty enough, you can definitely make it work. Should you though? Definitely not. Some of these fights were a goddamn nightmare since you're supposed to use Atreus a lot and use certain weapons for certain enemies, and not having a range attack really sucks in a game that was clearly designed around having an axe that you can throw at any time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, especially if you made it this far, and let me know if you have any other ideas for God of War. I'm thinking about doing a level 1 run on Give Me God of War mode because I hate myself, but I also still have a few other Elden Ring videos that I'm gonna make, so if you want to see any of that, maybe give this video a like and subscribe if you think I deserve it, but thanks again, have a good rest of your day. Peace.